Welcome. This is John Davidson, the VIP coach, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you today. You know, you're here, you're listening to this because something got you motivated to open up this audio. This audio is about how you can have the best year of your life. I do this every year. I've been coaching now for 17 years, and one of the recurring themes that I do is I do a process called the annual crossover process with our coaching clients. You see, I see a year as a process of closing out what's behind us and also opening doors to what's ahead of us. There's a threshold or crossover moving from one year to the next. And that's the sentiment, is that something is on the way out while something is on the way in. We all have moments of reflection during our downtime, during our holiday season. Some of us get very sad. Some of us get very touched and sentimental because we remember things that probably left our lives, and we remember things that have yet to come. We remember things that are important to us that we didn't get to, and yet we need to. So it's a great time of reflection. It's a great time of kind of pulling it all together, of saying goodbye to a year in the past and welcoming a new year coming forward. As a matter of fact, this movement from what's to go and what's to come is something that is constantly kind of living us all the time. That as you go along, as you walk forward, you never quite know where the mystery is going to take you. The universe, sometimes it cooperates with you, sometimes it doesn't. But have you noticed that life is somewhat like a wild card? Sure, you can have an intention, you can set your sights on what you want to create, and that's an orientation to the creative, to have a life plan and to focus on what you want to create. Sure, that's different than reacting to the circumstances that are presenting themselves to you. If that's all you did, then you would just come up with better responses to the circumstances. But that's not creating. What I train creators to do is to master the mechanics, the spirit, the fundamentals, and the orientation of the creative process. The creative process is the most extraordinary method of achievement in human history. People are naturally inclined to build, to generate, to grow. Creating is something that we naturally incline to the arts. We say, well, creating, I have to be creative to create. That's not true. I've had a lot of uncreative people create amazing things. You don't need to be creative as a prerequisite to create. In fact, they're two very different things. And oftentimes in psychology, creativity is a process of free associating. I have to be freed up. I have to slow down. I have to get in position. I have to do all this inner work to be creative, as if creative was going to precede creating. And at the same time, I've seen a lot of creators create, and they're not being creative at all. And I've seen people being really creative and not create. So creativity and creating are two different things, or two different processes. Certainly it's fun and it's enjoyable to be creative. To be able to move in directions, to feel that you can have creative freedom is a great thing. But that isn't what's required to create. Creating is the intentional process of bringing something into being that matters enough to see it exist. So if I want to make a chocolate cake, I don't need to be creative to make a chocolate cake. I just started making a chocolate cake. If I want to create a business, I don't need to be creative. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But creating a business is coming up with an idea of the business I want to create, starting toward that idea, then it expands. I learn my vision. I'm observing the current stage of the creation as it's being built. Some parts that are occurring are parts I didn't expect. Other parts are things I'm ready for, things I'm not ready for. But most of the time, creating is doing something that I don't know how to do. That's what makes it fun and enjoyable. People often say to me, JD, how do I get happy? I've been coaching people for many, many years. I've got 22,000 coaching sessions behind me. You'd think I had the answer. What I can tell you from my experience is that it's not about happiness at all. It's about creating what matters to you. And if you create what matters to you, you'll be more involved in life. And I think that's what people really are thirsty for, is to feel involved in their business, to feel involved in their relationship. When they're involved, it transcends their relationship with time. The way they pass time is so quality to them that they in fact lose the velocity of time. Things seem to just go so quickly. They come out of a creative process. They've been immersed in a book that they're writing, or they're creating a play, or they're creating whatever they want to create. And it's so liberating to them during the process that they kind of forget themselves and find themselves in it. But the creative force, the creative act, the matchstick out of which they create, the creative fire, is something that comes and goes. In fact, if they only created on the days when they were inspired, there wouldn't be any consistency. Creating requires discipline. It requires an orientation to the outcome. It requires an accuracy of what's actually going on compared to the outcome we want to create. It requires one to be keenly aware of the current stage or the current moment that someone's in. So you can imagine what goes into that. I mean, those are moments when you're very, very attentive. You had moments this year when you had that. You were focused on goals, and then you looked at where you were. You knew that you weren't doing something that was working. You either intuited it, right? You knew that it wasn't working, or you had a basis of comparison. If you were creating a financial goal and you had to set a number of appointments to create that, the appointments are necessary. It's informed action. You're doing it on behalf of what you want to create. You could tell right off the bat if you're either hitting those appointments or not, and then based on that current reality, that's your teacher. You do something with it. Oh, but no. This is where it gets tough. Because once we know we're failing, then we add all this meaning to it. Then we have to bring our identity to the game. And it means something about us. And this is where things get really weird. That we are, whether we're successful or not, it's really defining who we are. And it makes it very, very difficult to use failures as an asset. If you talk to professional creators in any industry, they use failures as assets all the time. In fact, they depend on failures. I had one client call it a successful failure versus a mediocre success. So he says, well, look, I wonder how much I'm rewarding my failure versus my successes. I think he has a point. But in the West, in the Western countries, we do not award failure very easily. We love finishers, and we tend to bias great people to being so successful that we've created a stereotype of what it looks like, and then people get a hold of a quick fix because they want to take the easy way, so they find all the right answers, and they look for a fix, and then what they do is they go and work something that worked something, it was there to serve someone else's goals, but it may not work their own. I think this is one of the big disappointments that a lot of early creators in their business experience is that they try to get a system, they go out and they get someone else's system, they emulate it, and then it doesn't work. And then they wonder, well, what was wrong? I don't trust the person anymore. Or, the system didn't work. I thought it was field tested. But it doesn't. It totally contradicts a eternal truth, and that is that every creative process is to its own authentic. That everything that you create will never be the same as anything else. The process is its own reward. How you get there will never go exactly as expected. Sure, you may intend your actions, you put your actions forth, that's orientational. And you may know the technical qualities, right? The steps that you kind of sense are coming, and you take those steps. You have a means to an end. But as to what turns up, whatever current reality is going to deliver, you can't predict the future. You can only create one, so you have to keep moving. In fact, by moving, you tend to buoy to the surface the information that you need. You see, a lot of individuals will just get stuck in waiting on a guarantee. They'll want to feel safe about the way the year is going to play out. In fact, they don't even get started on their aspirations for the year until it looks okay. But all they're doing is they're just organizing their efforts around fear. They want to prevent something bad from happening, so they look for the guarantee. And I call this getting ready to get 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 ready. Have you ever had one of those moments? Of course you have. We all have. We all are natural procrastinators because we care about ourselves a lot. What? How could that be true? JD, how could procrastination link to caring about ourselves? It really is. We really don't want to hurt ourselves, so we are very risk avoidant. So I have a desire to act on something. I resolve it by action, but at the same time, I have potential risk. I have risk of failure, humiliation. It may not go as expected. I may take a financial loss. I may be isolated from someone because they didn't agree with what I was doing. I have dependence on me. So I'm taking risks. Now, to avoid those risks, I may inact. And the more I enact, the more I have a desire to act. The more inaction I take, which means no action, the more I have a desire to act. The desire builds up the less I act. How do I resolve this? I resolve it by making choices that support my higher choices. What do I really, really want? See, I can't mitigate risk and create opportunity at the same time. Those two can't happen together. I have to choose one versus the other. If I want to mitigate risk, then I'll leave everything the same and I'll remain in continuity. And I'll just resolve risk by just probably compromising and trying to rationalize and make the most out of what I have. But really what I'm doing is cloaking a very deep sense of powerlessness. I don't have the power to create what I want. But I find risk is very it's not assessed well. People are often overconfident about what they think they can do. And they use overconfidence as a form to brainwash themselves with propaganda and cheerleading instead of looking at what is actually going on. They don't look at their actual capacity because of their pride. There's so much foolish pride, they don't want to go through the stages of looking like a fool to learn where they're going. Learning means acquiring the capacity as they create. Because creating is a process of bringing something into being that doesn't exist yet. You have to start with nothing. You create separate from what you know. This isn't easy when a human has a little installed chip in its software called an ego. So you inspire yourself into dread. A lot of the things that you think about and you really, really want in your heart's desires are not something that your ego is willing or thinking it's going to do. So it says no. But then your soul is so convicted and convinced that you choose to do it anyway, and then the ego kind of comes along as an apprentice. I often call it it's like the rehiring of the ego. It's just the ego's been given a bad job when it tries to go out and portray that it's better than it is. See, what a lot of us are doing is we're not working the values that we want to create. We're working our ideals. Yeah. We have a bad opinion of ourselves, and so we go through these years trying to live up to standards of perfection that we're never going to meet. And it's because we have an identity that's at play that we don't like. We have a little secret self that we hide from the world. And then we go out into the world, the big outside world, and we make it look like we know what we're doing. We lie, we use pretense, we costume ourselves, we hide ourselves in the dark to get acceptance and to win people over. We manipulate other people to offset our shame. And this is maybe a journey. It's a journey into shattering that little self, that little part of us that we've made up conceptually. And instead of motivating our ideal, which is the way for us to offset what we are negatively believing about ourselves, we focus on truly creating what it is we love. So we replace the ideal with what our true desire is. And desire is just simply wanting something for its own sake. It's love generative. It's generative love for something that we would like to or want to see exist. I love when someone says, build your passion, focus your passion this year. What are you really saying by focus your passion? I think it's often confused. I think passion is something that you feel passionate about. But passion, if I only felt passion and then created from that felt passion, I find myself having superficial moments with it. It's great and then it's not, and it's great and then it's not. But when we're talking about at the very fundamental level creating is a management of choices. It's not about finding a passion. In fact, there's nothing to find when you're creating. You don't discover anything. You conceive of a creation before you start. You love it before you decide. And then when you decide, you bring the creation into being through choices, through actions that you take. And the actions are in service to the higher choices that you make. See, I've had moments when I'm creating when I don't feel like creating. I don't necessarily want what this is in the moment. But I know that I'm in service to the higher choice. It's that kind of discipline that's required when we are creating, when we're creating as professionals. But a lot of us make it about a psychological process. We bring a psychological view into creating. I mean, I suppose psychological views have something to do with creating, but it's not the bedrock of creating. If you talk shop with a creator, they're not going through all the psychological stuff. They're not worried about how they are feeling, or they are not trying to tweak or improve themselves. In fact, creators learn professionally that the more they look at themselves, the less they're focused on their creations. Yeah, that would be like a selfish mother focusing on herself and the way the baby's affecting her while she's giving birth. She's focusing on the baby. The orientation is third person. It's not first. It's not about what's happening to her. It's about what she's bringing into the world. That's very much like the orientation of a creation. When you're creating a recipe or a food or a meal or creating a movie or creating a book or creating a program or creating a drawing or you're creating a business, your focus isn't on you, your focus is on the business. So what I might be bringing up in you is if you look back on the year and some of the achievements that you made were successful, if some of the achievements were not successful, these two need to be treated with equal value, right? So when you weren't successful, what were the reasons why? And the ones that you were successful on, what were the reasons why? We tend to skip over this step. We just go right into, oh, what's next? Or, I'm going to set goals this year. And so we just sort of reset goals, but we need to maintain the continuity of the momentum sometimes that we've started. So you have several areas that you've probably set goals into in your life plan, if you are living by a life plan. And I encourage you do, because you're choosing to be a predominant creative force in your life. If you are choosing to be that predominant creative force, then you've made a series of primary choices. And these creations are not born because you're obligated to create them. They're considered because they were optional. You wanted to create them. You got to create them. You have to create them because you so much want to. They matter to you to such a degree that it is something you choose to create. Something that doesn't matter to you is not something you'll probably choose to create. There'll be alternative reasons, but probably not energy like this. Clean energy, like the love you have for something. Not the superficial passion, where it's hot one day and not the other day, but it's something that you truly long for in your deepest desires. Desire means of the king. So you want it to exist. Don't put psychological pieces around this. This is not some big process. This is just having some sense, an idea, it doesn't have to be terribly clear, about what it is that you really want to create. One of the reasons why people often lose the energy throughout the year is that they didn't really focus on what they wanted to create. They focused on the means. They didn't focus on the end in mind. They focused on how to get there. Yeah, that would be like me saying, I'm going to create walking 3 times a week. I don't like walking, but I know the outcome that walking serves, and I love that one, and I love what's possible, especially because I love that one. I love what it does for my family, and I love what it does for me and sustaining my life, and I know all the creations in my life that will serve. Those things matter to me. So in my hierarchy of choices, I choose. And so when I'm in the bedroom in the morning and it's really cold and I'm looking at my tennis shoes and my shorts, I'm arguing with that all the time. I don't want to go. I want to go watch the morning show. I want to cook breakfast. I can do this. I can do that. I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, there's got to be 100 arguments that I battle and win. It's not that I'm using willpower to get out the door. Not at all. In fact, I know how weak I am, and I'm very honest about how much I'm arguing with myself. In fact, I look at the arguments and I look at the resistance like a roommate. I just bring it right over and I see him. And I say, oh, I see you there. You're resisting. That's okay. But I have bigger business to attend to. So what the roommate does is the roommate complies with what I want to do. See, I am managing that roommate. I'm not having to get energy from that roommate. I'm not forcing that roommate to go. The roommate doesn't have a choice. I do. Who's calling the shots? Who's calling the shots? Who is the I calling the shots? The I is calling the shots, that part of me that says this is what matters. Call that the soul, I guess. Does it really matter what it is? Does it matter? Do I need to know where? No, I need to know that it is something that does matter. I can know it because it wants movement. I know it because it needs to mobilize. It needs to get somewhere. It needs to go to the goal. It needs to move. It has a tendency to move because of desire. So we think of what we want to create. Now, there are several areas that you're probably considering in crafting and looking at the composition this year. And everything's up for grabs, by the way. I love this because as you're considering it, you can rethink your life at any time. You could imagine that you got a fresh start and you want to create this year, the next 3 years, the way you want it. And you can choose. So you might looking ahead at the dwelling that you want to be living in. You might look at maybe the surroundings or the conditions in your life, your lifestyle that you want to create. Or maybe your inner sketch and your way of being. Maybe that's content that you want to create, or your relationships in your life. There's tons of them. Your relationships with friends, family, your significant other, your children, and yourself. And then you have your relationship with God. You have the universe. And then you have community and that relationship. And then you have money and personal finance, extracurricular activities. Right? These compose the full scope of your life. There's probably parallel 7, maybe 10 of these areas. So I suggest that you lay them out so that you're thinking of decorating each one. You're thinking of giving energy, parallel energy to each area. So I try to lay out, let's say, 7 or 8 that are kind of the true geography of my life plan. These are the ones that I'm going to be creating in, tracking on. They're like an 8-lane freeway to creating the vision that I want to create for my life. And within them, they will define pretty much where and how you spend your time. They'll probably define how you'll earn money and how you'll save money, because you have personal finance, you have your business in there. Your relationships, of course. You know, and then your relationship with you, your relationship with yourself, probably has something to do with your calling or your unique talent or personal gift. And if you don't know what that is, then maybe this year would be a good year to espouse that, to start housing that and delegating everything else. But part of the way forward to simplifying your life, making it maneuverable, having less grind, having more energy and enjoyment, is about moving closer to a circle where you put yourself in an area of superior skill that you have a passion for. And then you draw a moat around it. You are your own bouncer. You are the guardian at the gateway of this circle. And you only let in things that are essential to it. You only let in things that are going to complement it. You let people in that are going to require it. You let opportunities in that are going to need this creating from it. You take away other things that you don't enjoy doing and that other people have this kind of energy. You put it in their circle versus yours. Call it your authentic self, your essential self. But it's a part of you, it's a seed that's within you that really belongs to the world. It's like a horse in a pasture. You just have to find the pasture for it so you can run full. Having the right environment, you'll know when it gets turned on because you'll feel a voluntary energy coming through you. You'll do something and you'll feel so much psychic salary and so much personal internal reward that you could do it all day long and truly be filled. So having this sort of energy is a matter of choice. It means that you organize your life around things that really do this to you. And what you'll notice is that the more that you do this, the more useful you become. You know, this is a very fundamental piece to how you construct the place from which you operate at your business to be creatively valuable to others in the spirit of who you are, to be you and to become competitive. And to be depended on to be more of you authentically, to not have to fake your way into the world and not have to shape your identity around the way people socialize you or expect you to be, but come from inside out as to the way you want to help them and the use that you want to be for them and the sacred project that you have pregnant within you that you need to live out. It is about listening. So your relationship with yourself, this is offering yourself, being there for yourself in your own, you might call it your sense of purpose or your sense of calling and what really matters to you. And it's combining that with that which makes a difference for other people. It's an essential thing. It's a spiritual economics called E equals DM, which is energy equals that which makes a difference times what matters. We get energized by things that we do that give us energy because they offer a lot of value to other people. Businesses are wonderful for that. It's really terrific. I've seen chefs in restaurants so delighted to bring food out and just delight the guests, just to help them have scintillating flavors and to offer themselves great tastes. And there's so much payoff. There's nothing financially that could come close to that sensation. And so when you put that behind what they do, their food is phenomenal. Peter Drucker said that profits in a business is like oxygen. But if we think it's about breathing, we're totally lost. If that chef thought it was about the money, he wouldn't make the food that way that would make the money. It's kind of paradoxical that the thing that makes all kinds of value for other people they pay us for is a very holistic thing. In fact, it's a fundamental relationship. That the more that you trust this quality in yourself and you find a domain for you to express it and house it in your career or in a business or in a relationship or in a ways that other people depend on you, you become better and better at it. You focus it inevitably over periods of time where all these other sort of arbitrary decisions and these other incidentals start to tie together into one core. And then as you construct that, you find yourself coming back kind of home to home base, to this base camp, this activity, this thing that defines you, and it is a magnet. And the beauty of it is that you love doing it, but it also is something people really want to pay you for. They have relationships with you for it, and they want to refer you for it. So when you begin to focus that, it's having a certain self-knowledge and a self-application within the needs and desires and opportunities and the helping process with others. This is how creative freedom and creative value come together. So your relationship with yourself is a key piece in your creative purpose. So your creative freedom is your ability to free it up and plan with a supporting team. Your creative value is how you're going to listen to a marketplace and gather data so that you can become more essential within your gifts and your business process. And your creative purpose is kind of sensing where it's all going and being able to stay connected to yourself, stay connected to that future self that you are becoming, that is emerging through you as you walk. So as I say this to you, I'm talking about goal setting on all levels. The life plan includes the self, it includes the other, it includes your life, it includes your business. You pull it all together. In fact, balance is considering all this at once. Balance equals counterbalance. Not everything matters the same. The reason why I know that is that you have a scarce amount of time. You have a fixed amount of life that you have. You're not going to live forever. You're not an elf. And you're not immortal. And you're going to die sometime. And living a little closer to death might help you see how fragile and precarious life is. That if you want to wait another year on this thing that I'm talking about, this is a very dangerous thing, is to just keep moving away from it. If you don't think that you can, I would really rethink that and call your bluff, because whether you think you can or not is not relevant to your creative process. Creating is a process of learning. It's also a process of unlearning. So you will acquire new habits, and the purpose of setting goals in these areas is to change your behavior. Do not set realistic and attainable goals, because that's born out of the past. You don't know. See, when you create, you stop knowing. You start at zeros. You start with a blank canvas. You have no conceptual limits. And when you create, you don't just use your head. You're not intellectually creating, because creations don't come from your head. They're not born of logic. They start from the heart. Creations are kickstarted from something you care about before it exists. That's what gets you to go. That's what gets you to mobilize. That's what orients you. That's what keeps you in the game, is that you care about it. If you didn't care, why would you create it? It wouldn't be a successful motive. But if you care about it, then you're fully embodied in what you're creating. You embody what you create. So it'll start with an idea. It'll start with a big idea. So in each one of these areas, make a single page for it. What's the big idea? With your health, what's the big idea this year? A goal is an idea. It's an aim by which you keep score. And when it's something you see, it becomes a vision. It's just a different version of a goal in pictures. So the vision is what compels you. It's what motivates you, but the goal is what you measure by. So in each area, start identifying what that picture is, and then also, what are the goals that I know it would be working or not working by? This requires a little bit of thought and guidance. We take our coaching clients through the life planning process. We pick metrics that they can measure this by. We give them a set of metrics by which they can keep score. The reason why it's important to have a concretized metric is because you have to articulate, in order for you to get good at creating, means build capacity to create what you want, you have to know where you are. And to know where you are, a prerequisite is to know what you are measuring your vision by. I'll give you an example. If I go to the beach and take my shirt off, and I feel great, that's a great image. And that gets me to get up in the morning and do something better, to exercise, go to the gym, walk, eat differently. But how do I know whether it's working? Well, I could maybe keep it intangible for a while. You know, I look different, I feel different. But maybe my waist, I start creating a 32-inch waist. And now I can measure, I have a 36-inch waist now. I mean, that's really super clear. It doesn't get any more accurate than that. I have a 36 now. I want to create a 32. I've got 4. So there's energy to work with there. There's tension that's seeking resolution between my 36-inch waist and my 32-inch waist, and that I have this picture behind it. And then as I look at the current reality, I might ask myself, well, what else should I know, or what else should I describe relative to that 32-inch waist? Well, I might describe my eating habits. I might describe who I'm hanging out with. I might describe how many times I eat out. I might describe what my wife likes. I might describe the foods I like, the foods I don't like. I might describe certain patterns that I have while I'm eating. I might describe what I like, what I don't like, my preferences, the foods I like, the foods I don't like, the time schedule I have as to when I tend to eat and when I don't. I might look at other factors in my body. I might look at other health factors just to get a current picture, a starting point, which will help me see what to change and where to change. You have to build a bridge. So you do not go into strategy until you've outlined a vision, you've understood a goal or goals that make the vision doable, measurable, and then you have a current reality that is good, bad, and ugly. It doesn't matter whether it has positive or negative. The point is whether you have a place to start. You have to be honest with yourself. The current reality is an acquired taste. Now you think about strategy. So you've got all the energy plugged in. You've fueled it. You've got the honesty of the current moment where you are, standing at the beginning of the year. Now you've got the desired state, and you're about ready to consider strategy. So let's talk strategy. You've got some pretty lofty goals. I'll bet you do. You have some pretty sizable creations. So how can we go about executing in a manner that works? Now, do you need to get really organized? You probably aren't. If you are, that helps. But you don't need to be terribly organized. You just need to be organized enough to create what you want. So getting organized means now you begin to think priority management. See, now it gets down to what are the significant few things daily, weekly, quarterly that you need to keep your eye on so that you stay in an outcome-focused path. You don't get into a reactionary path. Because the way things will work is you will do what you always do unless you have something more compelling to do. Right? You've given yourself justice to move away and depart from your old self, your old habits, your old way of operating, your old automatic ways that you fall back on, your default ways of behaving, which get embedded when you're unconscious about them. Now that you've set the goal, you've become conscious about your incompetencies. You've become conscious about your competencies. But in order for you to make the change become unconscious in your competencies, which is habit, it's going to require some alignment between your daily actions and the outcomes that you choose. This is called secondary choices and primary choices. So you're going to come up with some proposed initiatives, some answers, and you're going to ask yourself, all right, what are the steps I need to take? Or what do I start, what do I stop, and what do I continue in the lanes of this area of my life plan? So my health, I'm going to stop eating when I feel like eating chocolate cake, and I'm going to start eating a meal plan. So create a meal plan, set a deadline, and here's when it gets done. But see, as you do that, you're going to start coming up with a pretty good size amount of information. There's probably a lot that you're going to need to change, and that's true. So in order for you to make it digestible and get started, maybe break it down to the 1 or 2 most significant things that you can get done or you can accomplish in the next 12 weeks. Make time dimensional, not linear. So it's not lining up. You're thinking about within 12 weeks, what are 2 or 3 objectives that I can accomplish? Like a cue ball in a billiard game that sinks the far shot. I'm going to line it up. So thinking of my annual, what do I need to do in the 12 weeks I have that will be done and it will put me on a path, a trajectory, a line of sight to go into my next one. I can build momentum. And that's where I'm going to start. And so you get this creative habit going. Now, part of what you're going to go into with is a wise innocence. You're not going to have the answers. You're going to be going into the process blind. Don't be overconfident. Don't go into the year expecting it all to go down because you've become this master planner and you've got a master plan. You've top-downed it. You know, the level of clarity is going to produce your level of success. That's all BS. Creators don't start with a bunch of clarity. They get clarity as they move. Yeah, they get agility out of the ambiguity. And often out of the volatility of what they experience, they get more vision. It's a process of being revealed. It's a revelation and an inheritance. But what gets them to move is the impulse of the idea. It has a pulse. It has a catalyst. It has a catalytic quality to it that gets them to light a fire under their ass. And then they get started. The key is just to start. Once you start to see more because you're provoking new actions reveal new revelations reveal new twists, new turns, new tweaks. You're going to see new signs, new cues, new clues. And so the process begins. It's a process of exploration. You're going to eliminate certain things that didn't work. You're going to continue doing things that do, and you're going to start new things that didn't happen before. And that start, stop, and continue is a process of learning. It's learning in a cycle where you plan, do, study, act, plan, do, study, act, plan, do, study, act, plan, do, study, act. And then as you move forward, you're kind of learning the future as you're doing it. You're sort of ready, fire, aim, which is another side of it. It's an inevitable side of living the wild card of knowing and not knowing, and knowing and not knowing, coming into knowing from not knowing. So you're going to learn and unlearn at the same time. You're unlearning like an old dog who had a lot of old tricks. Now you're going to learn new ones, and you're going to learn a lot of new things that are coming, and you're going to continue things that are working. But you are aware of where you are at all times compared to where you want to be. These are called moments of awareness. What I find a lot of people do is they set up these life plans. They go into these 12-week periods. They start to structure their actions. They get out their calendars. They put the time-activated elements in there. And then things play out, and then they forget. And they don't keep their tires to the road. And then other things become more important. And then suddenly they start rationalizing. And then they don't recover. And then they start the next 12 weeks. And then they have a piled-on amount of goals. And then there's too many things to think about. And then there's this sense of loss. And then they start to give up and they compromise. And then the second half of the year is kind of figuring out what went wrong and how we're going to get back on track next year. And so they kind of just swing, nothing happens. And then they strike out and then they go to the next year. And it creates a plateau effect where there's no upward mobility. There's no upward traction. So part of it is setup. Part of it is the underlying structure, that we didn't build it so that the path could go all the way. Part of it is the inability to, we don't know how to create. We've never had any masterful training in the creative process. Building our life as art, yeah. The other part of it is that we are in a world where we have enormous amounts of complexity. We truly do. We have a lot that's assaulting our attention span. So really, those assaults are serious enemies to assault our attention, our concentration. Our concentration is being consistently parachuted and dropped in on by so many things, more than ever, advertising, distractions, so many things. So we really need help as humans with all these demands because we've got so many main event ideas and we've got all these small, sudden urgencies that are just plummeting at us, that we're getting tsunamied by all of these things, and yet we can't keep it under control. So we lose our perspective, and it's diluted by all of this lack of control. We become hopeless doers, or we live on someday island. We just do a bunch of things that don't really move us in any direction, or we just put away our dreams. We just expense it because we live by our circumstances, and they seem like the gravity of that circumstance is just far too great compared to our own power, and so we give up our power. And then we forget to be a fundamental chooser or a predominant creative force in our life. And it's not because of the way of things, it's because of the way we believe things are, and then we live out of that belief. Isn't that something? It's so simple, it's so near and close to us, and yet you can see there are lives that are lived and then people die, still convinced of those underlying notions that lie very, very deep in their conscience, that I can't have what I want or I can't create it. There's just too many things going on. And then there's this whole movement about being present, which is another way of saying, well, I don't really want to wish for anything. I'll take better what I have. And so we've tried to respond better through that. What we don't see is that the presencing is a very important player in the creative process, that when we presence within a creative structure, within the structure between where we are and where we want to be, something motivates our ability to be present differently. Rather than just being present for the sake of present, we're present on behalf of a creation, and so we tend to bring a different intention into our attention, and that helps things emerge differently. You've probably had mysterious situations come up where you meet the person at the funniest time, or something happens so perfectly it almost seems like the universe is listening as if you're a transmitter or like a transmission tower, that the internal voice is turned up such that the unified voice or the global voice is listening, and suddenly it's delivered to you like a package under the tree for Christmas. It's perfect. It lines up just beautifully. The coincidences. That's probably what happens when you compare where you are to where you want to be. It's like having a little helper or nature stacked to your success. It's like having allies that are unforeseen forces coming to your aid that you never would have seen had you not stepped into committing to your creation. So you will make choices. You will change your mind too. You may get halfway through the year and realize that what once mattered before doesn't matter anymore. The point is you shift your orientation to what does matter rather than what should matter. When you do things that should matter, you're not occupying your true voice. You're doing things that other people want you to do. You're working someone else's goals, or you're trying to live up to your ideals, or you're trying to prevent an outcome that you're afraid of, or you're trying to solve a problem that you don't want anymore. This is when you say, this is what should matter. And when you get what should matter behind your energy, behind your actions, things just really go off track. They go sour. Because what should matter, it doesn't really matter. And there's a very big distinction. And I recommend that you choose to live by what does matter, because you do. That's a choice. It's a fundamental choice from which you organize your life-building process. Do you want to invest your life spirit in a compromise? I know I don't. And if the years just keep going by and they're going by what seemingly is like faster, I'm not going to do that. I want to play all the music I have in me to play. I want you to play all the music you have in you to play. You came here with great things to create. You have great potential creations that live inside you that have yet to get expressed. If you have reasons not to create, turn those reasons into current realities. Those are starting points. There will always be constraints in the creative process. There will always be. Do you need to be worthy of your creations? No. I mean, certainly if you are a person that is damaging other people and getting in your way and creating a rebellion against you, if you're doing criminal things, that's definitely going to limit you. But for you to organize your life around whether you are worth your creations by deserving what you desire, you really got it out for yourself. You're going to make a bunch of requirements. It's going to take you 10 years' time to get to something you really want. You don't need to deserve what you desire. Creators are not caught up in this fetish of what I deserve. It's not about their identity. They're focused on creations, not themselves. So whatever you think about you, which you think high or medium or low, is whatever you think about you. But you don't need more self-esteem to create. You don't need to justify your existence. Right? You don't need to be building yourself up. You need to be honest with yourself. Part of your starting point is accurately describing what you know, what you don't know, what you do, what you don't do. You have to be talented to be talented. Talented to be talented means you recognize your talents, and also you recognize where you don't have them. That's not arrogance, and that's not self-defeating. That's true. You know it, you verify it through your experience. Some moments you're really a dutz and you're a fool and you don't get it, and you never will get it, and it's important to recognize that so that you can move. And at the same time, you know when you really are getting something because it becomes easy for you. It becomes something that you're learning, and it's moving you closer to your creative process. But the key is to know where you keenly are, to really get a sense of where you really are so you know where you need to change and what you need to adjust. And really continue doing that until what you have and what you want are the same. And what you'll do in these years is you'll create universes, right? You'll imagine a universe first in the mind, and then you bring it into being, and then you live in it. And then the following year, you look back on where you were before, you look at your achievements, you write down the reasons why, whether they happened or didn't. If they did, you write down the reasons why. If they didn't, write down the reasons why. Go deep on that. See if you can understand really the reasons why. And then write down a further progress step as a momentum step, and then first action. Get your action going so that you U-turn where you are into a mobilized state, into a state of movement, of moving toward what you want. Some might say to me, but JD, I can't always be moving. I can't always be doing. I'm not expecting you to. All I'm saying is that when you enter the moment, have some sort of intention. Knowing what matters to you puts you in a different position than not knowing anything. Knowing what matters to you may be something that's speaking loud and clear to you that you're not listening to because you're not trusting it. And if you're not trusting your decisions, then look at what's motivating them. Because when you do things that matter to you, you tend to trust your decisions a lot more because you know what's at play. You know where it's coming from. You love it. It's simple. The best creations, like Robert Frost said, are for their own sake. So where do you start? Well, I suggest that maybe you identify the 3 areas of your life plan that are going to be the most important to you this year. Maybe it's health. Maybe it's your relationship with the Scriptures. Maybe it's your relationship with your wife. Maybe it's your relationship with yourself. Maybe it's your relationship with your kids and the role that you want to have in their life. Maybe it's your leadership journey. Maybe it's your build out at your company. Whatever it is, it's up to you. Right? It's not something that the world is going to shape for you. If you don't, it probably will by default because time is like a vacuum. If you don't fill it with something, something else will. So I leave you with this, and would it help you if you had a wingman, a sidekick, a climbing buddy, someone that could open conversations with you, honest, safe, and transparent conversations with you, much like a court jester would back in the day, who told the king the truth without being killed? It takes a lot for people to tell you the truth, and the more truth you get, the more visibility that you receive about what's really going on. But you have to pay for that. You have to pay for honesty. You have to invest in honesty. It requires another to see you to be able to complete who you are, to be able to see the full picture of what you're doing, how you're operating, how you're showing up. You can't be defined yourself. You have to be seen in order for you to be complete. The properties that you have are only ordered up and completed by the patterns of interaction that you have. So a coaching relationship offers that mode of interaction to see and be seen, to provide you visibility, to make you resourceful in ways that you haven't thought of, to take on the challenge of your goals but have 2 minds thinking as one, because the team intelligence is always better than the individual intelligence. You need the speed and impact and the bottom line feedback of coaching to get better. So coaching isn't about having some dreaded pain or having some problem or situation. Coaching is about an opportunity. And the best coaching relationships are born out of a maturity that someone has to be wrong, to have the comfort level with their own ignorance, to collaborate and to get help and to see the benefit of teamwork and collaboration. Someone who's ready to really pull it all together and be able to synthesize and simplify things down to the main essentials and take away the non-essentials. To get back to all the relationships that you might have left when things got complicated or overwhelming. To be able to stick to your priorities and be able to stay connected to actions and opportunities that connect you to your deepest life dreams. To remove non-essentials, things that don't support what you dream of or things that don't support your strengths. To build an effective team around you and unify them so that you're not the one doing it all, but you're able to offload key things to free them up so they can build their careers and develop their unique abilities. And to be able to live a life on purpose and to connect with a larger sense of self, a sense that you know kind of where things are all going and you can kind of live into courageously emerging future possibilities. To be able to listen and to pull back and open your heart and open all of your organs of perception and to receive and access and connect with your highest future possibilities. To own a business, to be an enterprise builder, go out into the world and make a difference in the community, to help the world see the opportunity of you, harvest your creative freedom, and to build what you want on purpose. What you probably really want to do is be involved with, like I said, the things that you're creating, to get more out of your life-building process, and to remain in that line of sight, to know that you have a certainty of destination as to where you're going, and anchor that place you're going to all of your decisions, your actions, and communications today. What kind of impact would that make? How useful would you be as a human being? How quickly would you be able to make decisions about what to do or not do? How cool would it be to be able to live and occupy your fundamental values in everything that you do? And just think about at the end of your life when you get out your report card, think about what you're going to be saying by having done all that. Think about all the lives that you've touched, including being there for yourself and your family and your significant other. You owe it to all this. You have so much in you to give. And I believe that there's so much potential in you to do. But in order for me to do that with you, you have to be able to walk through the door that I open. The coach's responsibility is not to play the game and win for you. I can help you get the context. I can help you to see the reason why, but I can't make you make anything a priority. The coaching relationship is a sacred one. It's a conversation. It's a conversation that has you, me, and the conversation itself. As to what prevails or precipitates in the conversation is always left to the mystery. And I always like to be wisely innocent about knowing that there is something there. So if something in this audio has gotten your attention or got you excited, and you are super serious about creating the year that you want to create, and you want to master the fundamentals, the spirit, the mechanics, and the orientation of the creative process, and direct that to the domains, yourself, your life, your business, your team, in which you're going to create and lead change, please give us a call. 714-375-6624. That's 714-375-6624. My name is Coach JD. I am the VIP coach. We are a one-on-one coaching program for high-level producers and entrepreneurs throughout the world. We've been in business since 1998 and just celebrated our 22,000th coaching session. We have actively over 50 enrolled coaching clients that are in many different industries, from real estate to medical to legal to manufacturing to construction and IT. So we look forward to having a discovery call. That would be our next step. If something in here you want to explore what the opportunity of a coach would be, I'd love to spend 20 to 30 minutes with you in a spirited call to learn more about you and your situation. We're online at highlevelperformance.com. Please visit our blog on there. I have a radio program on there called the Mach Zero Podcast, Making Time for Life, One Thing at a Time. We have what are called Monday Advantage videos. You can look us up on YouTube, which is all about liberating leaders and saving geniuses. And I also have an online written blog. There's two of them, what I call Blue Sky Time, which is deep reflection time. And also one called Entrepreneurship 3.0, which is a new version of entrepreneurship where we bring it all together from the self to life to growth and people. So I look forward to hopefully connecting with you at some point. Thank you very much for listening.